I wanted to broach a subject that came up with a friend of mine today. She was talking about a pastor that does not believe in women ministers, and she was saying that there have been several women that have been called to minister under his leadership, and that he actually preaches against it from the pulpit. Not only that, he has asked the congregation that whoever was there that was a preacher or a minister, he wanted them to stand and to acknowledge that. And he expected the women of the church that he knew were called of God to preach, he expected them to stay sitting. And he asked the congregation, I'll tell you what, there comes a point in time whenever God has called you to preach that you stand no matter what, that you stand even when someone expects you to sit. You stand not for them, but you stand for God. You stand for God because you know that it is God that called you to preach. It is God that ordained you. And let me tell you this, if God has called you to preach, he will tell you and he will confirm it over and over again. It's not going to be something that you're not sure of. You're going to be sure of it. And listen, the enemy will tell you, oh, you're not called for this, you're not called for that. When you get saved at first, he'll even say you're not saved. You know, that's how the enemy works. But when you know deep down inside of yourself, you know that God has called you to do something. I don't care who, what man, what devil in hell has anything to say about it. You stand. You stand not in defiance, but you stand for your God. And don't you ever let no man tell you that you're not called when God himself has called you. And that's all I had to say today. You know, there are references in the Bible. Read about Deborah and what a wonderful prophetess she was. Read about the end times. We all know we're in them. God said that he would call the daughters to prophesy. That preacher or that pastor is actually going against the Word of God. Do you really want to stand under somebody like that? Do you really want to come into agreement with someone like that? Because let me tell you something, that is outside of the will of God and the Word of God. It's time now. It is time to do what God's called you to do.